The containment field hummed with energy as Marcus Webb stood at the center of the Grand Tribunal chamber. Above him, below him, and stretching in every direction, thousands of alien beings stared down at the lone human. The chamber itself was carved from something that looked like frozen starlight, glowing with soft blue radiance that made everything feel cold and ancient. Marcus could see creatures with too many eyes, beings made of pure energy contained in crystalline shells, floating masses of tentacles, and forms so alien his mind struggled to process them. He was alone. His hands were bound in magnetic restraints that pulsed with suppression technology designed to prevent any aggressive movement. His simple black uniform looked pathetic compared to the elaborate robes, bioluminescent displays, and floating ornaments worn by the alien representatives. Some of these beings ruled hundreds of worlds. Others commanded fleets larger than anything humanity had ever imagined. And they were all here to judge Earth. At the highest point of the chamber sat Archon Velis, the council leader. His form towered over everything else. A massive crystalline structure that shifted colors based on his emotions. Right now, those colors were cold blue and deep purple. Not good signs, according to the intelligence reports Marcus had memorized. Humanity, Velis spoke, and his voice came through neural translators implanted in Marcus's skull, bypassing language entirely. You stand accused of territorial infringement. The evidence against your species is irrefutable. Your world exists in space that has belonged to the Keltheran Empire for 800,000 years. Marcus said nothing. He simply waited, his eyes scanning the chamber with careful precision. He noted the positions of the guards, the locations of the exits, the species that looked sympathetic versus those that looked hostile. This was a skill humanity had developed over thousands of years of warfare and politics on Earth. Read the room. Understand the players. Find the leverage points. Velis gestured with one of his crystalline appendages. Holographic displays erupted throughout the chamber, filling the space with images and data. Marcus watched as star charts appeared, showing Earth's solar system marked clearly as Keltheran territory. Ancient treaties scrolled past in languages he couldn't read. Historical documents claimed that this region of space had been under Keltheran control since before humans even existed as a species. The evidence was overwhelming. Perfect, even. Too perfect. Do you have anything to say before we render judgment? Velis asked. The question was clearly rhetorical. No accused species had ever successfully challenged the Council's historical records. Marcus smiled. It was a cold expression that made several nearby aliens shift uncomfortably in their seats. Show me the original documents, Marcus said clearly. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers and alien sounds that the translator couldn't quite convert. Several representatives made gestures that Marcus's briefing suggested were expressions of disbelief or outrage. Velis's crystalline form flashed red. You dare make demands of this council? I dare ask questions, Marcus replied calmly. You're claiming Earth has been Keltheran territory for 800,000 years. I'm asking to see the original source documents, not copies, not translations. The actual original records from 800,000 years ago. The whispers grew louder. Velis seemed taken aback, his colors shifting rapidly between red and confused green. The archives do not work that way, human. We maintain comprehensive databases spanning millions of years. What you see before you is the verified historical record accepted by all council members. When were these records last updated? Marcus asked. That is irrelevant, is it? Marcus's voice carried across the chamber with unexpected force. Because 6 months ago, when humanity first made contact with your council, we were hopeful. We came in peace. We brought gifts. We wanted to join your galactic community. His voice hardened. Instead, we found that we didn't exist in your records, not just our current civilization, but any record of Earth or humans at all. According to your archives, our solar system has always been empty, except for Keltheran territorial markers, because it was their territory. An alien delegate shouted from the right side of the chamber. Marcus turned to look at the speaker. A creature with multiple arms and a crown of bone protruding from its skull. Then explain this, delegate. If the Keltheran Empire has controlled our solar system for 800,000 years, why are there no Keltheran structures on any of our planets? Why are there no archaeological sites? Why is there no evidence of their presence except in your digital archives? Undeveloped territory, another delegate called out. Colonial reserves are not required to be actively inhabited. Convenient, Marcus said. Tell me, how many other colonial reserves exist in Council space? How many other star systems are claimed but show no evidence of the claiming species ever actually being there? Velus's form pulsed with angry red light. You are stalling, human. Your arguments are meaningless. The Council's judgment stands. Earth will be evacuated. Your species will be relocated to designated zones. This is final. Marcus had been waiting for this moment. He reached into his jacket pocket slowly, making sure every guard could see his movements were non-threatening. He pulled out a small data crystal and held it up. Before you finalize that judgment, Archon, I think you should see what we found. A human technician, who had been standing so still in the shadows that most of the aliens had forgotten she was there, stepped forward. Her name was Rachel Torres, and she was humanity's top computer specialist. She took the data crystal and inserted it into the chamber's main display system. The holographic records that had been showing Keltheran territorial claims suddenly flickered and changed. New data appeared, and this time it made Velus go completely still. This is Archive Log Theta 779, Marcus announced. It's the maintenance record for your historical database. According to this log, major revisions were made to the Territorial Claims section 42 years ago. That's exactly 2 years after humanity achieved faster-than-light travel capability. The chamber went silent. Every alien was staring at the data. Marcus continued, his voice steady and cold. Someone went into your archives and changed history. They took a solar system that showed no ownership and retroactively assigned it to the Keltheran Empire. They erased 800,000 years of Earth's natural development and replaced it with fabricated territorial claims. Impossible, Velus said, but his voice lacked conviction. The archives are protected by the most sophisticated security in the galaxy. Are they? Rachel Torres spoke for the first time, her voice sharp and confident. Because I just showed you that your archives were modified. We have timestamp data. We have the digital signatures of who made the changes. And we have financial transaction records showing that the archive, Masters received 47 billion galactic credits from Keltheran accounts in the weeks before those. Changes were made. The chamber exploded into chaos. Delegates were shouting in hundreds of languages. Some were demanding explanations. Others were calling for investigations. A few were already transmitting messages to their home worlds. Velus tried to restore order, but his crystalline form was shifting through colors so rapidly it was clear he was losing control of the situation. Marcus waited for the noise to die down slightly, then spoke again. You erased us from history. You pretended we never existed because it was convenient for the Keltheran Empire to claim our world. But here's what you didn't consider, Archon. Here's the question you should have asked before you tried to steal humanity's home. He paused, letting the tension build. What does a species do when it discovers the galaxy tried to erase it from existence? Before anyone could answer, every display in the chamber changed. A new image appeared across all the holographic screens. A human woman in military uniform, her expression deadly serious, stared out at the assembled council. Attention, Galactic Council, the woman said. My name is Admiral Rebecca Kane. I speak for the combined military forces of humanity. 6 hours ago, Earth officially declared war on the Keltheran Empire and any council member who supports this illegal historical manipulation. Gasps and shocked sounds filled the chamber. Kane continued. While you were busy erasing us from your records, we were preparing. Our fleets are in position. You wanted to pretend we didn't exist? Fine. We used that invisibility to prepare for this exact moment. You have erased us from the past. Now let me introduce you to humanity's future. The transmission cut out. For 3 seconds, the chamber was completely silent. Then the long-range sensors began screaming alerts. Warning lights flashed throughout the council headquarters. A junior technician stumbled into the chamber, his alien face showing clear panic. Archon, the technician stammered. We have reports coming in from Keltheran space. Human warships have appeared in orbit around 200 Keltheran worlds, including their home world. The chamber erupted into complete pandemonium. Delegates were screaming. Guards were rushing around. Velus's crystalline form had turned black, a color that Marcus's briefing said represented complete shock and terror in his species. Marcus stood calmly in his containment field, watching the chaos unfold around him. He caught Rachel's eye and gave her a tiny nod. Phase 1 was complete. The interrogation room was smaller than the grand chamber, but somehow more intimidating. Marcus sat in a chair that had been hastily adjusted for human proportions, surrounded by 4 council security officers and 3 intelligence analysts. Archon Velus loomed in the corner, his crystalline form still flickering with unstable colors. "Explain how you built a fleet," Velus demanded. "Our intelligence reports showed only scattered colony ships and exploration vessels. No military infrastructure, no weapon foundries, no training facilities." Marcus leaned back in his chair, surprisingly relaxed for someone whose species had just declared war on an empire that controlled 3,000 star systems. "Your intelligence showed you exactly what we wanted you to see." One of the analysts, a being covered in blue fur with 6 intelligent eyes, stepped forward. "Impossible. We have monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. We track every ship that enters or leaves a star system. We would have noticed military construction. Would you?" Marcus asked. "Tell me, analyst, how many dead star systems do you monitor? How many asteroid fields get regular inspections? How many nebulae have permanent observation posts?" The analyst's fur rippled with uncertainty. Marcus continued. 42 years ago, one of our ships made first contact with the Keltheran Empire. Captain James Okonkwo tried to introduce humanity to the galaxy. He showed them our coordinates, our history, proof that we were a real civilization from the Sol system. His voice hardened. The Keltheran officer laughed at him, said it was impossible because that territory belonged to them. Captain Okonkwo barely escaped with his life. Velus shifted uncomfortably. "First contact incidents are sometimes complicated." "Are they?" Marcus stood up, and none of the guards stopped him. "When Captain Okonkwo returned to Earth with that news, our leaders had to make a choice. We could reveal ourselves fully and hope for justice, or we could recognize that the galaxy was not ready to acknowledge our existence. We chose survival." He walked to the room's window, looking out at the vast station of Nexus Prime, where thousands of ships from hundreds of species came and went in carefully regulated patterns. "We went silent," Marcus said. "Every ship that left Earth after that day had 2 purposes, the public one and the real one. To the galaxy, we looked like a scattered primitive species, barely capable of maintaining a few colony worlds. But in reality?" He turned back to face Velus. "We were building a war machine." Rachel Torres activated her datapad, projecting images into the room. The images showed construction facilities hidden inside hollow asteroids, entire fleets assembled in the dark spaces between stars, training grounds on airless moons that no galactic survey had ever considered worth investigating. "We had advantages," Marcus explained. "First, you weren't looking for us. Why would you? According to your archives, we didn't exist. Second, we had something you hadn't faced in millennia. We had desperation, the creativity that comes from knowing if you fail, your entire species loses their home." One of the guards, a massive creature with armor-like skin, spoke for the first time. "You claim to have 2,000 ships at Keltheran Prime. Even if true, the Keltheran Empire has 20,000 warships. You cannot win," Marcus smiled. "You're thinking about this wrong. It's not about how many ships we have. It's about what we can do with them." As if on cue, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Velus immediately connected to the station's communication network, his form pulsing with data reception. "What's happening?" the armored guard demanded. "The Keltheran Defense Fleet just engaged the human forces," Velus said slowly. His colors were shifting to something that looked like awe mixed with fear. 400 Keltheran warships attacked the human position around Keltheran Prime. "And?" Marcus prompted. "The human fleet disabled all 400 ships in 17 minutes. Not destroyed, disabled. Every Keltheran vessel had its weapon systems surgically removed, its engines burned out, but life support kept intact." "There are no casualties?" The room went silent. "That's impossible," the analyst whispered. "That level of precision requires targeting systems and coordination that shouldn't exist. No species can achieve that kind of synchronization across thousands of individual ships." Marcus walked back to his chair and sat down. No species that you know about. But then again, you didn't know we existed until 6 months ago, did you? Velis moved closer, his massive form somehow conveying confusion. What are you, humans? How did you achieve this technological level in only 42 years? We didn't achieve it in 42 years, Marcus corrected. We achieved it in 6,000 years. That's how long humans have been developing warfare technology on Earth. We've fought wars with sticks and stones. We've fought with swords and arrows. We've fought with guns and bombs and nuclear weapons. We've spent our entire history learning how to kill each other more efficiently. He stood again, his voice taking on a harder edge. And then we went to space and discovered we'd been erased from history. Do you know what that does to a species? It clarifies everything. All those thousands of years of warfare suddenly had a purpose. We weren't fighting each other anymore. We were preparing to fight for our very existence, Rachel added to his explanation. While you were comfortable in your galactic order, humanity was studying you. We analyzed every battle record in your databases. We studied your tactics, your strategies, your technological limitations. We found your weaknesses. What weaknesses? The analyst demanded. You're slow, Marcus said bluntly. Your communication protocols require verification at multiple levels. Your chain of command is Byzantine. Your ships are powerful but inflexible. You've spent so long maintaining peace that you've forgotten how to wage war efficiently. He pulled up tactical displays showing the Keltheran engagement. Look at this. The Keltheran fleet took 9 minutes to achieve basic formation. 9 minutes. A human fleet can form up in 40 seconds. Their targeting systems required authorization codes from 3 different command levels. Our targeting is autonomous. Their ships moved in predictable patterns because that's what your military academies teach. We don't have academies. We have simulations based on 6,000 years of warfare evolution. Velis's form had turned a shade of gray that Marcus had never seen before. You're saying humanity is better at war than civilizations that have existed for millions of years. No, Marcus corrected. We're saying humanity is better at war than civilizations that have forgotten what war really means. You've had border skirmishes and trade disputes. We've had extinction-level conflicts. The difference in experience is staggering. Another alarm sounded. This time, Velis's reaction was even more dramatic. His entire form seemed to flicker and dim. What now? The armored guard asked. Intelligence reports coming in from across the galaxy, Velis said quietly. Human ships have been detected in 300 different star systems. Not 2,000 ships. 12,000 ships. The room went completely silent. Even Marcus looked surprised for a moment, though he quickly schooled his expression back to calm neutrality. 12,000, the analyst repeated numbly. Where did you hide 12,000 warships? We didn't hide them, Marcus said. We scattered them. A few ships here, a few ships there, hidden among asteroid fields and nebulae across the entire galaxy. While your sensors were looking for massive fleet concentrations, we were building a distributed network. Every human colony, every hidden facility, every secret base contributed ships to different staging areas. He walked to the display showing the galactic map, now dotted with red markers indicating human fleet positions. Do you see the pattern? We're not concentrated in one area. We're everywhere. Every major trade route, every strategic choke point, every council member world that voted to support the Keltharan territorial claim. He turned back to Velis. We've been invisible for 42 years. We used that time wisely. Velis moved closer to Marcus, his massive form somehow seeming smaller now. What do you want, human? What is your end game? We want what was stolen from us, Marcus said simply. Our history, our legitimacy, our right to exist without having to hide or fight for every day of survival. And if the council refuses? Marcus's expression turned cold. Then the galaxy will learn what humanity learned thousands of years ago on Earth. When you take everything from someone, when you erase their very existence, you don't create a victim. You create an enemy with nothing left to lose. Before Velis could respond, a new holographic transmission appeared in the room. It was General Isaac Torres broadcasting from an undisclosed location. Behind him, tactical displays showed what could only be described as humanity's true military might. Archon Velis, Torres said, his voice calm and professional. I understand you have questions about humanity's capabilities. Allow me to clarify. The 12,000 ships you've detected represent our forward deployment forces, our rapid response fleets, our reconnaissance and special operations groups. Torres gestured to the displays behind him. But the galaxy seems to think that's our full strength. It's not. Behind those 12,000 ships are another 18,000 in reserve. Behind those are our manufacturing facilities, which can produce 600 new warships per month. The emergency council session was unlike anything in galactic history. Every species had sent their highest representatives. The chamber was packed beyond capacity, with junior delegates standing in corridors just to witness the proceedings. Human warships orbited Nexus Prime itself, visible on every external display screen as a constant reminder of how dramatically the power balance had shifted. Marcus Webb sat at the newly constructed human delegation table, positioned at the same level as the council leadership. The symbolism was clear. Humanity was no longer a supplicant begging for recognition. They were a power that demanded respect. Beside Marcus sat Admiral Kane, who had arrived 12 hours earlier on a heavily armed human dreadnought. Her presence added weight to every word Marcus spoke. This wasn't just diplomatic talk. This was backed by the very real capability to enforce humanity's demands. Archon Velis called the session to order. His crystalline form, showing colors that Marcus now understood, represented deep stress and uncertainty. The Council recognizes Ambassador Webb and Admiral Kane of humanity. You have demanded this session. Present your case. Marcus stood, but it was Admiral Kane who activated the first set of displays. What appeared throughout the chamber made hundreds of delegates gasp in shock. For the past 6 months, Kane began, human intelligence operatives have been gathering evidence. We've infiltrated your communication networks. We've accessed your financial systems. We've interviewed witnesses across hundreds of worlds. What we've discovered is worse than simple theft of one planet. The displays showed financial transactions, communications logs, and testimony from Archive Master Guild employees. The evidence was damning. Not only had the Keltheran Empire paid to erase humanity, but the practice was far more widespread than anyone imagined. Marcus took over the presentation. The Archive Masters have been erasing species from history for 200,000 years. 17 different civilizations have been deleted from your records at the request of empires, corporations, and political factions who found it convenient to pretend those species never existed. The chamber erupted. Delegates were shouting at each other. Some were demanding investigations. Others were trying to deny the possibility. A few looked horrified as they began to realize the implications. Kane displayed images of 12 different worlds, each one showing ruins of civilizations that officially didn't exist according to galactic records. We found them. We went to these coordinates listed in the financial records and found archaeological evidence of advanced civilizations. Some were extinct. Some were enslaved. All of them were erased. A delegate from the Orathi Collective, a being whose bioluminescent form was pulsing with agitation, stood up. Her name was Rin, and according to Marcus's briefing, she was known for being fair-minded and progressive. If this is true, Rin said carefully, then the Council has been complicit in cultural genocide for millennia. How can we trust anything in our historical records? Marcus nodded to her. That's exactly the right question, Delegate Rin, and it's why humanity isn't just demanding justice for ourselves. We're demanding a complete overhaul of how the Council maintains historical records and treats emerging civilizations. But not everyone was convinced. Delegate Cracks of the Vortan Supremacy stood, his multiple arms gesturing aggressively. Even if these accusations are true, humanity's response is unacceptable. You have committed acts of war. You have threatened sovereign territory. You have demonstrated military technology that violates Council regulations. I propose we form a coalition to contain this threat immediately. 30 species signaled their agreement with Crax's statement. The chamber was dividing before their eyes. Marcus had been prepared for this. He walked to the center of the chamber, standing in the same spot where he'd been a prisoner just days before. Delegate Crax, you're right. We have committed acts of war. But ask yourself this, who started it? The day you erased us from history was the day you declared war on humanity. We're just the first species strong enough to fight back. He turned slowly, addressing the entire chamber. Every species in this room needs to ask themselves a question. If someone tried to erase your history, steal your homeworld, and pretend your entire civilization never existed, what would you do? Would you accept it peacefully? Would you go quietly into whatever reservation they assigned you? Or would you fight? The chamber grew quieter as his words sank in. Admiral Kane stepped forward. Humanity doesn't want endless war. We want what was stolen, and we're offering you a path to resolve this peacefully. She activated a new display showing humanity's formal proposal. Full council membership for Earth and all human colonies, retroactive to our first FTL achievement. Reparations from the Keltheran Empire and the Archive Masters Guild, and most importantly, an independent commission to investigate all cases of historical erasure and work to restore those civilizations that still exist. And if we refuse? Velis asked quietly. Marcus's expression turned hard. Then you'll discover that 12,000 warships are just the beginning. Humanity has been preparing for 42 years. We have colonies you don't know about. We have technologies you don't understand. We have alliances you haven't detected. If the Council forces this to become a real war, you'll learn exactly how dangerous a species becomes when you take away everything they have to lose. Before the Council could respond, something happened that changed everything. A new transmission forced its way through the chamber's communication systems, bypassing all security protocols. The image that appeared showed an alien being that looked humanoid but clearly wasn't human. "My name is Elder Thane," the being said. "I am of the Korvathi people. According to your records, my species does not exist. According to your archives, we went extinct 80,000 years ago." His expression hardened. "That is a lie. We have been enslaved by the Sarvex Corporation for all that time. They erased us from history so they could use us as free labor without council interference." The chamber went completely silent. Elder Thane continued. 3 weeks ago, human scouts found our world. They didn't ignore us. They didn't pretend we didn't exist. They liberated us. Human Marines and our own resistance fighters fought together to free our people from 8,000 years of slavery. Behind him, the image shifted to show Korvathi and humans standing together, Sarvex corporate flags burning in the background. "If the Council will not listen to humanity's peaceful offer," Elder Thane declared, "then the Korvathi formally request to join Earth's coalition. We will not be erased again." The transmission ended, but before anyone could react, 3 more transmissions came through, 3 more species that humanity had found and freed, each one telling the same story of erasure, enslavement, and liberation by human forces. Delegate Rin stood again, her bioluminescent form now showing colors that Marcus's briefing said represented righteous anger. The Orathi Collective withdraws all support for the Keltheran territorial claim. Furthermore, we demand an immediate and complete investigation into the Archive Masters Guild and any species that participated in historical manipulation. One by one, other delegates stood to echo Rin's declaration. The council was fracturing, but now it was splitting between those who wanted to maintain the corrupt old system and those who recognized that humanity had exposed something rotten at the core of galactic governance. Archon Velis watched his carefully maintained order collapsing around him. His crystalline form cycled through colors faster than Marcus could track. Finally, he made a decision that shocked everyone. "I have failed," Velis announced, his voice carrying across the stunned chamber. "I have led this council for 15,000 years. In that time, I allowed corruption to take root. I allowed the strong to prey on the weak. I allowed entire civilizations to be erased because it was convenient." He paused, his form dimming. "Effective immediately, I am stepping down as council leader. The council will hold emergency elections for new leadership. And the first act of that new leadership will be to address humanity's grievances in full." The chamber exploded into shocked discussion. No council leader had ever voluntarily stepped down in the entire history of the galactic government. Marcus looked at Admiral Kane, who nodded slightly. They had won, not through force alone, but through exposing the truth and forcing the galaxy to confront its own corruption. Delegate Rin moved quickly, sensing the moment. "I propose immediate emergency measures. First, full council membership for humanity, granted immediately and without conditions. Second, establishment of an independent historical truth commission with full authority to investigate all claims of erasure. Third, mandatory review of all territorial claims dating back 500,000 years. And fourth, immediate sanctions against any species or entity found to have participated in historical manipulation. The vote happened quickly. 623 species voted in favor. 89 voted against. 135 abstained. The motion passed. Marcus Webb, who had stood in this chamber as a prisoner facing judgment just days before, was now Earth's first official ambassador to the Galactic Council. As he walked through Nexus Prime's corridors after the session, he passed delegates from dozens of species. Some nodded with respect, others with fear, a few with hope. 6 months passed quickly. The council chamber looked completely different now. The old hierarchical ring structure had been replaced with a more circular arrangement where no species sat higher than another. At the center, where Archon Velis once presided alone, now sat a rotating council of 5 species, including humanity. Marcus Webb called the session to order for the first time, his voice steady and confident. Beside the human delegation sat Elder Thane of the Korvathi, representing the coalition of restored peoples. 8 civilizations that humanity had helped rediscover and liberate now had their own voting bloc in the council. But today's session was different. Today, the galaxy would decide the fate of those responsible for 200,000 years of historical erasure. In the gallery, stripped of all rank and authority, sat former Emperor Drax of the Keltharan Empire. Next to him, equally disgraced, sat Archive Master Jolas and 14 other leaders of the Archive Masters Guild. They were about to face judgment, but it wasn't Drax who spoke first. The Keltharan people had already acted. A parliamentary coup 3 months earlier had dissolved the empire entirely. Now, Prime Minister Hallex stood to address the council. She was a reformist who had led the charge against Drax's corrupt government. The Keltharan people were deceived, Hallex began, her voice carrying shame and determination in equal measure. We believed the lies about ancient territories. We trusted leaders who told us expansion was our birthright. We were wrong. She paused, looking directly at Marcus. We are here to make amends. What followed was unprecedented in galactic history. Hallex laid out a plan to dismantle the Keltharan Empire's entire imperial structure. The 3,000 systems they had claimed would be reviewed. False claims would be relinquished. Species who had been subjugated would be freed. Marcus leaned forward. Prime Minister, the reparations demanded by humanity and the 8 restored peoples amount to 400 trillion galactic credits. Your economy cannot sustain that payment. What do you propose? Hallex's answer surprised even Marcus. We propose a debt of service. Keltharan scientists, engineers, and historians will work under coalition supervision to locate and restore every species we can find evidence of erasure for. We will spend the next century doing the work we should have been doing all along, helping civilizations flourish instead of erasing them. Admiral Kane, sitting beside Marcus, smiled slightly. This was the outcome humanity had negotiated in private channels. Not destruction or humiliation, but transformation and restoration. The council voted unanimously to accept the Keltharan proposal. It was a start toward healing 200,000 years of corruption. But the Archive Masters were different. They showed no remorse. Archive Master Jolas stood when called, his crystalline eyes reflecting light in patterns that suggested contempt rather than regret. We maintain galactic stability. Sometimes difficult decisions must be made for the greater good. Erasing problematic civilizations prevented countless wars. Marcus remained silent, but someone else stood to respond. Dr. Lena Park, Earth's chief historian who had spent 6 months investigating extinct civilizations, walked to the center of the chamber. You want to talk about the greater good? Dr. Park's voice shook with controlled fury. Let me tell you about the Velen. They were artists. Their entire culture centered on creating beauty that could move species across biological barriers. You erased them because a mining corporation wanted their planet. Her voice grew stronger. Let me tell you about the Thresh. They were healers. They developed medical techniques that could have saved billions. You erased them because their evolution didn't fit someone's ideology. Dr. Park activated displays showing 43 different worlds. 43 civilizations erased over 200,000 years. The evidence was overwhelming. The archive masters hadn't just maintained stability, they had created a service economy based on making inconvenient truths disappear. The Council's judgment was unanimous. The Archive Masters Guild was dissolved. Their massive wealth, accumulated over millennia of corruption, was confiscated and dedicated to finding and restoring lost civilizations. The individuals responsible received life sentences, working in archaeological restoration on the worlds they had helped destroy. But the session's most dramatic moment came when General Torres requested to address the council. He walked to the chamber's center, his military bearing evident in every step. "There's something we haven't told you," Torres began, "about why humanity was so prepared." He activated displays showing Earth's history, thousands of years of human warfare, conquest, and cultural destruction. Humanity spent our entire history doing to ourselves what the Keltheran Empire did to others. We have 237 identified extinct cultures on Earth alone. Languages erased, peoples destroyed, entire ways of life lost to conquest and forced assimilation. The chamber grew quiet. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. Torres continued. "When we discovered you'd erased us from galactic history, it wasn't new. It was familiar. We recognized the pattern because we'd lived it, perpetrated it, and eventually learned from it. The difference is we evolved. We learned that erasing each other made us weaker, not stronger." Marcus stood to add context. "That's why humanity fights for the restored peoples. We know what it means to lose your history. We know the pain of cultural genocide. We refuse to let it happen to anyone else because we've seen where that path leads." The session moved to its final major announcement. The human coalition, initially just Earth and 8 restored civilizations, had grown to 47 member species. But it wasn't a traditional empire. Elder Thane explained the structure. "We are not subjects of Earth. We are partners in mutual defense and development. Humanity provides military coordination and technology. We provide diversity of thought and cultural richness. Together, we represent something the galaxy hasn't seen before. A coalition built on restored identity rather than conquest." Species after species joined the declaration. The Arathi Collective signed a mutual defense treaty. The Barathi Federation, grateful for years of anonymous human assistance, joined fully. Even some species that initially opposed humanity began negotiating for membership. As the session concluded, Marcus found himself alone in an observation deck. Admiral Kane joined him, carrying 2 cups of actual Earth coffee. It had become the most expensive beverage in the galaxy due to its rarity and the growing curiosity about human culture. "We did it," Kane said softly. "Erased to essential in 6 months." Marcus nodded but looked thoughtful. "Did we, though? 47 species look to us for leadership. That's a lot of responsibility. It's also a lot of accountability," Kane replied. "Every decision we make is watched by species who remember what happens when power is abused. We can't afford to become what we fought against." Their conversation was interrupted by a young aide. Private Jackson Mills delivered a message from Earth. President Cross was calling for Marcus and Kane to return home for a ceremony. Earth was establishing a new institution called the Department of Galactic Memory. Its purpose was ensuring no civilization, human or alien, ever lost its history again. Marcus smiled. That was exactly the kind of initiative humanity needed to champion. Not conquest or domination, but preservation and protection of identity. A week later, Marcus stood in the council chamber for a historic ceremony. Representatives from all 847 species gathered, but the focus was on 12 children, young beings from 12 different restored civilizations, including Korvathi, Velen descendants who had survived in hidden enclaves, and others humanity had found and freed. Each child placed a seed from their homeworld into a specially designed garden chamber that would orbit Nexus Prime. The Garden of Restoration, humanity's gift to the galaxy, would grow as a living reminder of what was almost lost and what was saved. Marcus delivered his final speech of the session. "Humanity came to the stars expecting to find our place among you. Instead, we found we had no place at all. You'd erased us before we could introduce ourselves. We could have responded with vengeance. We could have torn down everything you built. Instead, we chose to build something better, not a human empire, but a galaxy where every voice matters. Every history is preserved, and erasure is no longer tolerated. He paused, looking at the garden where alien seeds were beginning to sprout. The galaxy tried to erase us from history, so we declared war, not just on those who wronged us, but on the very concept of historical erasure. And we won, not through force alone, but through determination, intelligence, and commitment to truth. The chamber erupted in applause. It was a gesture humanity had introduced, now adopted by hundreds of species as a sign of respect. As delegates filed out, discussing the implications of this new era, Marcus remained behind. He looked at the Garden of Restoration and thought about how far humanity had come, from erased and denied to central and essential. But more importantly, he thought about what humanity had chosen to do with that power. They hadn't built an empire. They had built a coalition. They hadn't demanded submission. They had offered partnership. They hadn't perpetuated the cycle of erasure and conquest. They had broken it. The galaxy had tried to erase humanity from history. Instead, humanity had rewritten the galaxy's future. 50 years passed. Marcus Webb, now elderly and retired, sat in a garden on Earth that mirrored the Garden of Restoration orbiting Nexus Prime. Around him, human and alien children played together. Korvathi youngsters taught human kids songs in their ancient language. Orathi children showed Earth youngsters how to create bioluminescent art. Borathi and human teenagers argued good-naturedly about whose species made better spacecraft designs. A young girl, human, maybe 8 years old, approached Marcus. Her name was Emma, and she was his great-granddaughter. "Grandpa Marcus," Emma asked, settling onto the bench beside him, "is it true the galaxy tried to erase us?" Marcus smiled, watching a Korvathi child teach her human friend an ancient game. "Yes, child. They tried. Why? Because it was convenient for them. Because they thought we didn't matter. Because they had forgotten that every civilization, no matter how small or new, has value." Emma thought about this for a moment. "But we showed them, right?" "We did more than show them," Marcus said gently. "We taught them. We proved that the smallest voice, if persistent enough, can change everything." The garden was peaceful. Earth's sky showed the familiar blue that humanity had almost lost. But now, alongside Earth's ships in orbit, vessels from hundreds of species came and went. The Sol system had become one of the most important diplomatic centers in the galaxy. Earth's transformation over 50 years was remarkable. The Department of Galactic Memory had grown into the largest research institution in known space. Historians, archaeologists, and linguists from 600 species worked together in facilities across human colonies, dedicated to finding and restoring lost civilizations. The human coalition had grown to 217 member species, but it remained true to its founding principles. No species dominated. No voice was silenced. Power was distributed and constantly reviewed. The Keltharan Commonwealth, transformed from empire to federation, had become one of humanity's strongest allies. Their century-long debt of service had already located and restored 19 additional civilizations. Former enemies had become partners in the work of healing the galaxy's historical wounds. Marcus's personal communicator chimed. It was a message from Ambassador Rachel Torres, his former technical specialist who now held his old position at the Council. She sent him a report about the latest discovery. A team of human and Keltharan researchers had found evidence of another erased species. This one had been hidden for 400,000 years. "Another one found," Marcus said to Emma. "That makes 67 civilizations restored since we joined the Council." "Will we find them all?" Emma asked. "Probably not in my lifetime," Marcus admitted. "Maybe not in yours either. But that's okay. What matters is that we keep looking, that we keep remembering, that we make sure no one is erased again." Admiral Kane, also retired now but still sharp as ever, joined them in the garden. She moved slowly but with dignity, carrying a datapad showing news from across the galaxy. "You'll want to see this," Kane said, activating a holographic display. The display showed a ceremony on a distant world. A species called the Dranics, extinct according to galactic records for 60,000 years, was being welcomed into the council. They had been found by a joint human-Korvathi expedition just 6 months earlier. Their culture had survived in underground cities, hidden from the corporation that had tried to erase them. The Dranics representative, speaking through translators, said something that made Marcus's eyes water. "We spent 60,000 years in the dark, believing we were forgotten. Then humans found us. They didn't conquer us. They didn't exploit us. They simply asked if we wanted to be remembered. Today we rejoin the galaxy. Today our history is restored." Emma watched the ceremony with wide eyes. "That's what you did, Grandpa? You made sure people weren't forgotten?" "Not just me," Marcus said. "All of humanity. And all our partners. It's what we chose to do with the power we earned." Kane smiled, remembering those desperate early days when humanity faced the council alone. "We could have built an empire. We had the military strength. We had the technology. We had the advantage of surprise. But we didn't," Marcus finished, "because we learned from our own history. Earth taught us that empires fall. Conquest creates resentment. Erasure breeds resistance. So we chose something different. The garden was quiet except for children's laughter. Human and alien youngsters who had never known a galaxy where species were erased simply because it was convenient. They were growing up in a universe where every civilization mattered, where history was sacred, where voices couldn't be silenced. Marcus stood slowly, his old body protesting but his mind still sharp. He walked to where the children played and watched them for a long moment. These children represented something the galaxy had never seen before. A generation raised on the principle that diversity was strength, that preservation was progress, that remembering was resistance. A Korvathi elder approached, walking with the same careful slowness as Marcus. Elder Thane had aged, too, his species biology showing wear differently than humans. But both old beings shared the satisfaction of having changed the galaxy. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd chosen vengeance instead of justice?" Thane asked. Marcus considered the question. "Sometimes. We could have burned the Keltheran Empire to ash. We could have destroyed the Archive Masters. We could have made examples that would have terrified the galaxy into submission. But you didn't." "No. Because vengeance would have made us exactly what we were fighting against. Another power imposing our will on others. Another empire deciding who deserves to exist." Marcus looked at the playing children. "We chose to break the cycle instead of continuing it." Thane nodded slowly. "My people are forever grateful. 8,000 years of slavery ended because humanity chose to look for us instead of assuming we were extinct as the records claimed. 67 civilizations now," Marcus said. 67 peoples who would have remained forgotten if someone hadn't cared enough to look. That's the legacy I want humanity to leave. Not conquest, not domination, but remembrance. As the sun set on Earth, casting golden light across the garden, Marcus received one final message. This one was from the Council itself. The Historical Truth Commission, established 50 years earlier, was issuing its comprehensive report. The findings were sobering, but not surprising. In 3 million years of galactic governance, over 400 species had been erased from history. Some extinct, some enslaved, some scattered and forgotten. The Commission estimated it would take another 3 centuries to find and restore all of them. But the report ended with something hopeful. A declaration signed by all 847 Council species, plus the 217 members of the Human Coalition. Never again will convenience override truth. Never again will power silence voice. Never again will any civilization be erased from history. This we pledge, learned from humanity's example. Marcus read the declaration to Emma as stars began appearing in Earth's evening sky. "This is what we fought for," he told her. "Not territory. Not resources. Not power. But the simple acknowledgement that every people, every culture, every civilization deserves to be remembered. Did we win, Grandpa?" Marcus looked up at those stars, where hundreds of human and alien ships traveled freely between thousands of worlds. Where trade flowed. Where cultures mixed. Where history was preserved instead of erased. Where new voices joined the galactic conversation every day. Yes, child. We won, not because we were stronger or smarter or more advanced, but because when the galaxy tried to erase us, we refused to be forgotten. And once we survived erasure, we became something more powerful than any empire. We became a reminder that truth endures, that justice matters, that the smallest voice, if persistent enough, can change everything. Emma thought about this, then asked one final question. What should I do when I grow up? Marcus smiled, watching the children play in the garden built to honor restored civilizations. Keep looking. Keep remembering. Keep making sure no one is ever erased again. That's the work of every generation now. Not just humans, all of us together. As night fell completely, the garden's lights came on. Bioluminescent plants from Orathi worlds glowed gently. Flowering vines from Korvathi settlements added color. Human roses mixed with alien blooms from 100 different worlds. All growing together in harmony, different but united, diverse but connected. The galaxy had tried to erase humanity from history. Instead, humanity had taught the galaxy to remember. And in doing so, they had created something that would endure long after the last human and the last alien alive today had passed into their own history. Not an empire. Not a conquest, but a commitment. A promise that every voice matters. That every culture deserves preservation. That history is sacred and erasure is unacceptable. 50 years after declaring war on erasure itself, humanity had won. Not through weapons or threats, but through persistence, principle, and the unwavering belief that truth would ultimately prevail. Marcus Webb, the ambassador who had stood alone in the council chamber facing judgment, now sat in a peaceful garden surrounded by the results of humanity's choice. They had chosen to remember, and in remembering, they had changed everything.